It's another week, another set of bad actors, malicious files, and compromised systems. On today's show, we're going to be talking about some of the intel being shared by our awesome LimaCharlie community, and a huge thank you to all the folks that take the time to share their knowledge with the rest of us. If you enjoy listening in on these intel chats and aren't in our community forum yet, then you should join the conversation. Lots of information is being shared there, and you will get it in real time. You can join us at community.limacharlie.io. And as always, for these conversations, I'm joined by the one and only Matt Bromley. How are you doing today, Matt?
Hey, Chris, how we doing, sir? Good to see you. Good to see you. It's a shame we're not in person anymore. Man, I missed that. We are 1 week post RSA, and it was awesome to be hanging with you last week. Quick pro tip for anyone who hasn't seen that episode, go check it out. Yeah, I'm doing well. Survived. I guess hacker spring cleaning. I don't know if Black Hat is hacker summer camp. Can we call RSA spring cleaning or spring readiness? I don't know. But survived, did well. I'm back into a very, very rainy Texas right now.
Yeah, I feel like RSA is like the first track meet of the season, you know?
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it, actually. It's definitely the starter pistol for the marathon, for sure.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed the conversation in person last time. I think that's something we should try and make happen more often when we're at these conferences together, because the energy was different, you know? It was just easier to talk and kind of go down the side roads.
And it was fun. More importantly, it was fun as well. So yeah, let's find time to do that for sure.
Okay, awesome. Since March 2025, Velocity has tracked an escalation in sophisticated phishing campaigns executed by two suspected Russian threat actors, unknown threat actor 0352 and unknown threat actor 0355, targeting the Microsoft 365 accounts of individuals connected to Ukraine and human rights organizations. These campaigns involve direct social engineering over secure messaging platforms like Signal and WhatsApp. The attackers impersonate European diplomats or officials to arrange fake video meetings, leveraging Microsoft OAuth 2.0 authentication workflows to trick victims into providing authorization codes. Once victims respond, they're guided to click on legitimate Microsoft login URLs and send back the resulting authorization code, which attackers use to generate access tokens. These tokens allow the attacker to gain access to the user's account data or register attacker-controlled devices to Microsoft Entra ID, formerly Azure AD. One recurring method especially used by UTA0352 abuses Microsoft's Visual Studio Code as a first-party application to make the phishing attempt appear more credible. Victims are redirected through Microsoft 365 authentication to insiders.vscode.dev, where an OAuth code is generated and displayed. That code, if shared, enables the attacker to access the victim's account using Microsoft Graph API. UTA0352 impersonated officials from entities such as the Mission of Ukraine to the EU and NATO-aligned delegations, and sometimes provided documents or PDFs supporting to be from ministries of embassies to support the deception. Earlier versions of this attack used Azure AD version 1.0 and URLs redirecting to vscode-redirect.azurewebsites.net, also requesting users to return the final URL containing the authorization code. So that was a mouthful, but also like a pretty sophisticated phishing campaign. You can tell these guys really know what they're doing.
This is one situation where I'll agree with you. Sophisticated is the right word to bring this up here. As always, a preliminary hat tip to the folks over at Velocity for an awesome blog post. I love the workflow here and the way they describe kind of what happens between the starting point, I guess, if you will, of using messaging apps. Signal and WhatsApp have been seen. And then kind of how the authorization flow works, getting the victim to click on the code, requesting a verification and things like that. And then ultimately getting them to that, as Chris mentioned, that Visual Studio Code redirect page. A really, I think, unique, novel way, Chris. We see adversaries utilize these types of built-in redirects. Sometimes you'll see terms like domain fronting being used. I'm not calling this domain fronting, but just another way adversaries may abuse redirects or HTTP headers and things like that. But I always find it interesting to see, how these techniques work and then what that authorization flow looks like, primarily because this is not always as simple, and detection engineers and blue teamers, listen up. This is not as simple as always stealing, a username and password and then coming back, right? This is that next level of identity where it's more kind of session-based stealing, or getting a user to authorize access to something via an API key or some other form of code. So utilizing that OAuth 2.0, it changes the game a little bit. I think it changes what defenders look for, number one. Number two, it also changes what they can and can't detect. as well. So there's a lot more cloud-centric detection here because you need to understand the authorization workflow of, I should say, the authorization flow of Entra ID to understand what to look for and then what those variations may look like from typical normal account activity and stuff. I think the origin of the phishing here, Chris, which I know you're going to talk about a little bit further, but the origin of the phishing kind of focusing on Ukraine really gives insight into who they're targeting and what they're using as lure or what they're using as a bait. But a really interesting take here on how Microsoft authorization happens and ways that it can be abused. I mean, we're seeing Visual Studio Code, the Graph API, OAuth 2, Entra ID / Azure AD being mentioned here. This is, pretty good knowledge of the Microsoft ecosystem and something that a blue team would benefit from understanding their environment and what that presence looks like.
So UTA0355, on the other hand, introduced a slightly more advanced variation. This actor initiated contact via a compromised Ukrainian government email account, sending legitimate-seeming invitations to a video conference focused on war crimes investigations. Subsequent messages were again sent via Signal or WhatsApp to follow up, solidifying the social engineering. The URL delivered to the target pointed to a Microsoft login page, but this time was designed to abuse the device registration service rather than Microsoft Graph. If a victim shared the authorization code, the attacker would register a new device under the victim's Entra ID and later manipulate the victim into approving a two-factor authentication request to finalize access. Once device registration and 2FA approval were complete, Volexity observed the attacker using the registered device to access and exfiltrate emails. All of this activity appeared to come from IPs in proximity to the victim, likely through a proxy and due to the use of Microsoft's infrastructure and first-party applications. Much of the typical security logging didn't flag the activity. These campaigns deliberately avoided attacker-hosted infrastructure and do not involve malicious third-party applications, significantly complicating detection. Volexity recommends conditional access policies, training to recognize URL and code phishing behaviors, and monitoring for new device registrations as primary defense strategies. Notably, these campaigns exploit trust in Microsoft infrastructure and the subtle nuances of OAuth workflows, requiring heightened vigilance across organizations. Yeah, and that's really what stood out for me with this is this kind of phishing campaign is going to catch even folks that are, pretty aware about the security risks and have done the training. There's just so much stuff that you can get caught up on here.
Oh, yeah. And to be fair, too, this is also a pretty advanced phish. And what I mean by that is you're not sending this to your kind of run-of-the-mill normal user, like, hey, click on this thing and, win a prize, or, try to spoofing the O365 login page or something like that, right? This is more along the lines of, we're going to send the user down the path of various instructions. And I think you might lose a lot of lower level, and that's not an insult, but it's more about power user versus non-power user. You might lose a lot of non-power users down this chain, Chris, just because it's a lot of steps of understanding, insert this code, do this, do that, click on this, it's going to be okay. And you might have people be like, this doesn't feel right, not because they think it's a phish, but just because they're like, I've never had to do anything this complicated before, so this just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. All right. So next up, a recent security assessment by Watchtower uncovered a pre-authenticated remote code execution, or RCE, vulnerability in Commvault's on-premise backup and recovery solution, Innovation Release 11.38.20. The research builds on past efforts targeting similar platforms like Veeam and Nakavo, and emphasizes the criticality of such backup systems, not just for the data they safeguard, but for the sensitive credentials they often store due to broad infrastructure integrations. Commvault's enterprise-grade architecture, backed by Tomcat, IIS, and Apache Solr, exposed multiple application endpoints, some of which were not gated by authentication and were documented in auth-skip-rules.xml. These endpoints were quickly mapped out using decompilation and traffic observation techniques. The standout was the deploy webpackage.do endpoint, which was found to be exploitable via server-side request forgery, or SSRF. This endpoint enables unauthenticated users to coerce a server into fetching zip files from the attacker-controlled sources, using directory traversal in the service pack perimeter, and manipulating the response content. Watchtower demonstrated how malicious .jsp web shells could be dropped into publicly accessible web directories. Once unzipped, these shells could be executed directly via HTTP requests, achieving full remote code execution from an unauthorized starting point. A parallel endpoint, deploy service comcell.do, provided an alternative vector receiving zip uploads via multi-part form data rather than via SSRF. This variation would be useful in environments with restricted outbound traffic. So there you have it. I knew JSP files were evil from when I first worked with them early in my career, and I am now being proved correct.
Chris, I feel like when I read through this one, I feel like Watchtower has come on our radar before or has popped up, and I'm trying to remember why, because they've got quite a few blog posts that go through some really technical concepts. And then I started reading the post, and I was like, I remember where these guys showed up before. I think that like the tone and the general language with which they write the blog post is why I remember them so much, because they start out not by talking about what they found, but by starting out with, we're about to go to the adult version of Black Hat and we don't have to print out stolen mail spools. I mean, here we go again, right? It's one of those things. Let's get to the
was it maybe the kitty one we did a few weeks ago?
It might have been. I'm trying to remember. Oh, no. It was I remember exactly what it was. It was the 8 million requests later, we made SolarWinds supply chain attack look amateur. That's what it was. Okay. And it was full of memes and requests they were making to S3 buckets. I remember this.
There we go.
Yeah. Great finding. Awesome uncovery here of what I'm going to call like a pretty big gap in coding and something that shouldn't have been allowed to happen, but it did. Really interesting way to get around Commvault. 1, 2, I actually really like the blog post. The sarcasm aside, I really like the way they've put together what they were able to do, what the authentication process looks like, and how they were able to kind of walk their way through and get to the auth skip rules.xml. Once again, this file contains, and I'm reading from the blog post here, contains a list of endpoints excluded from auth filters, and there's a total of 58 in there, and then being able to explore and just be like, all right, what can I do with each one of these, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, pure hacking. I love it. Love to see this. What does this mean for defenders and blue teamers out there? If you got this thing deployed out in your environment, it's in the wild now, right? The knowledge is in the wild. Understand that there are some pretty public-facing resources that adversaries can use to, as you mentioned, upload files, execute web shells, and things like that. We want to get these things locked down at a minimum, and then at a maximum start to ingest and pipe those logs to locations too. I mean, just a wide range of defender activities here, but really focusing on let's shore and patch this thing up. And I'm not here screaming patch. It's more about, I think, detections are going to help in this case, and whatever Commvault may release in the form of guidance and things like that. And they have released a patch as of April 10th, 2025, and an advisory a week later. Follow the guidance in there to help patch this thing up, because again, this is one of those things where for anyone who may be listening to Chris and I for the first, second, or third time, in about 6 to 7 months, we will talk about some breach that's taken place, and the origin will be vulnerable Commvault. And I don't want to be there. I don't want to do that. So
yeah, I feel like we touched on Commvault like maybe a month ago. I remember it coming up because we were making an allusion to the bigger file sharing hack from the year before, which is eluding me now too, but biggest data exfiltration of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very big targets, these file sharing services internally.
Highly recommend patching them up as much as you can, because they are widely used. And as we've mentioned before, they are perimeter facing by design, widely used, highly vulnerable now. Not a good recipe for anyone who might be a target for a willing or, a little bit of a Googleable exploits here.
I think I forgot to mention it. You just reminded me at RSA, I'm not a big swag guy, but I got it into my head that I could get all the socks I need for the whole year in one day by going to the vendors with socks on the floor, and I got like 20 pairs. It was awesome. But one of the vendors I visited was Fortinet, and I told them that we talk about them on the podcast all the time because of FortOS, but it's not for good reasons, but that I also understand because you make public-facing devices and are a big target. So
nice.
Shout out to the folks at Fortinet.
Did the socks have holes? Never mind. Sorry. I shouldn't have asked.
Oh, okay. Back on track. The exploitation chain leverages common developer patterns such as dynamic file writing, trusted internal zip content, and insufficient path validation, which are often overlooked during code reviews of internal admin tools. Despite Commvault describing their product with terms like zero trust protocols, the discovered flaws allow zip content to be written and extracted to attacker-controlled paths. The final payload was triggered through a crafted request to /report/metrics upload/shell.temp/dis. I'm not going to read it. It's a long file path that ends with watchtower.jsp, resulting in server-side command execution. Watchtower responsibly disclosed the issue to Commvault on April 7th, 2025, and observed an unusually fast turnaround. A patch was issued by April 10th, and a public advisory followed on April 17th. The vulnerability has been assigned CVE-2025-34028 and impacts Commvault Innovation release versions prior to 11.38.20. The researchers clarified some versioning confusion with Commvault, who confirmed that the fixed code was available in technology preview versions of 11.38.20 and above. This finding underscores how critical systems, especially those with wide-reaching integration capabilities like backup solutions, can become highly privileged threat entry points, even with secure design principles in place. Functionality intended for routine admin operations can introduce major vulnerabilities. Organizations using Commvault should verify patch levels immediately, review exposed endpoints, and monitor for unusual deployment activity or web-accessible artifacts. Whew!
That was a mouthful, but you got through it, sir.
We did. Yeah, so big targets, public facing, patch. On to the next one.
All the next one.
All right. So I saw this one from CISA's Kev, or known exploited vulnerability list. I know you're a big fan of those. So
big fan.
They've added 2 SonicWall vulnerabilities, indicating an escalation in exploitation activity against the vendor's SMA series of secure remote access appliances. The vulnerabilities in question are CVE-2023-44221 and CVE-2024-38475, both of which impact SMA 200, 210, 400, 410, and 500V devices. CVE-2023-44221, rated with a CVSS score of 7.2, is a pre-auth Apache HTTPD-based arbitrary file read flaw, the more severe of the two. CVE-2024-38475 has a CVSS score of 9.8 and enables command injection after authentication. Though patches for both flaws have been available since 2023 and 2024 respectively, SonicWall has only recently updated its advisories to acknowledge their potential exploitation in active campaigns. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
We got to stop this from happening. But yeah.
Two years before you let anybody know.
That one is a little bit hard to stomach, unfortunately. I think I don't have, I don't really have much else to say other than, like, come on, guys, let's go. By the way, I think we meant to mention here, this is another Watchtower post. Actually,
I think this actually might have come off of like a CISA website, but they're referencing Watchtower. I can't remember where the source article is.
Hat tip to Watchtower, 2 blogs in a row. I think that's the first time ever that's happened. This one is a little less sarcastic in the writing here, but it does start off with it's a typical Thursday. I like reading your post, Watchtower crew. I hope you're listeners of ours. But yeah, this one is yet another, like, I feel like, Chris, we've mentioned this vendor before, unfortunately, but I'll just kind of remind everyone, the reason Chris kind of zoomed in on the Kev part of this is CISA, which as of today is still around, has a wonderful known exploitable or exploited vulnerability list that for me is like the final bar of do we care or not. And these devices have, first off, shown up on there, number one. Number two, let's be clear that this thing is under attack. And we've had a little bit of time. I'm just kidding. We haven't had any time to know about this. Some folks have had some time to know about this, but others have not. So this is one of those patch situations. Again, we're talking about a perimeter-facing device that exists in a lot of environments. Exists in probably a lot of a lot of company environments, a lot of enterprise edge and stuff like that. Let's work to get these things patched if we can. Not really a fan of how long the patches have been out there and available. And then the update from SonicWall, which essentially tells us, hey, the patches have been out there. but people have not been patching because adversaries have found success with it. Folks, I want to remind everyone and speak from a very high level perspective. One of the best ways to limit adversary success is to make it very difficult and costly for them to breach an enterprise, and leaving a 2-year-old vulnerability open to the point where the vendor starts to like advise you as to what's going on and stuff like that. Not the best situation to be in. So honestly, this is one of those situations where, okay, if you needed any sort of why should we patch decision, here it is. Right here it is. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm not going to name and shame. I don't know anybody to name or shame, but I just want to throw out there and say, in situations like this, Chris and I hope don't take the stance of, wow, look at what the adversaries are doing, that's amazing. We take the stance of, this should have been closed and patched up to the point where SonicWall may have posted, oh yeah, we've seen it exploited, but in a very limited number of environments, or a very small number of things, rather than we need to fix this, rather than CISA picking it up. I mean, it's just, come on.
Yeah, it's not good press for them, if anything.
Not at all.
And I'm curious, does reading the CVEs, like the whole thing, does that help, or should I just skip over that part?
I don't know if you need to go through all that. I feel like anyone who wants to check out the post could check out Watchtower's excellent post on it. It does go through some pretty unique details here.
Yeah.
I can summarize really quick and just say it's vulnerabilities in the Apache HTTP server and stuff like that. And some of these were actually announced at Black Hat last year, interestingly enough. The 2024 ones were. But we can leave it aside and say, yeah, this is a good technical post, but something that should be patched and should be shored up.
Go get her done, folks. So the broader concern is that SonicWall SMA appliances continue to be a high-value target for various threat actors, particularly because they often sit on the edge of enterprise networks with access to internal systems. Earlier this year, CISA flagged another actively exploited SonicWall bug, highlighting a continued focus by attackers on this product line. In response to the current situation, CISA is mandating that federal agencies patch all affected systems by May 22, 2025. SonicWall has also urged its customers to verify that there are no unauthorized logins occurring on their devices, suggesting some level of compromise may already be underway across a subset of installations. Given that these vulnerabilities span both pre- and post-auth stages and that technical exploit details are now public, organizations should assume that opportunistic and targeted attacks will accelerate. Systems that remain unpatched are now likely to be scanned and exploited by both commodity malware operators and more capable intrusion sets. SonicWall administrators are advised to perform full integrity checks on their SMA devices, verify patch levels, and review historical login sessions for anomalies. The timeline of patch availability versus exploit activity suggests that security teams should also reassess policies for rapid deployment of fixes on exposed infrastructure. Go do it.
Patch.
Patch.
Patch all the things.
Okay, this one was more of an interest piece. I just wanted to throw it in here because I feel like we crossed a pretty big threshold with this one. So sometime in the last month, bot traffic has overtaken legitimate human use on the internet, with the latest data showing that automated traffic now accounts for 51% of all internet activity, of which 37% is classified as malicious. So this is where my sci-fi dystopian brain starts to explode.
Yeah.
This trend is being sorry.
Just wow. I mean, folks, think about the amount of traffic we're talking about there, Chris. I mean, good Lord.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't be too surprised, right? Because there was something I saw once that of all the measurable human traffic, or observable human traffic, meaning for what you can imagine as human traffic, there's like maybe 10 or 15 API calls for each one underneath the hood. So it's kind of like, if you think, your web browser activity if you think the visual stuff is a lot, just wait until you hear about what powers the visual stuff, But this is just an insane number, I think, of 51% of internet traffic by automated bot traffic. Only 14% of this is allegedly good bots. And of course, AI is getting blamed for this. This is due to AI. The criminal use of AI is only likely to increase. I suppose that's probably true, I guess. However, and the reason I'm kind of hesitant about this one, I'm reading through the article right now, but this annual report from Imperva, the four most common API bot attacks focus on data scraping, payment fraud, account takeover, and scalping. And Chris, I'm going to be honest with you. You might talk about this one a little bit more, but I didn't really expect scalping to show up in the top 4.
I know it's a big thing, and I know that like bots drive a lot of that, so like concert tickets, I think of my daughter's really into Sabrina Carpenter, and if you thought that the concerts you went to were expensive, let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, but 11% of internet traffic. I mean, like, are the ticketing systems maybe inherently flawed or like too much gatekeepy or something like that? I mean, if 11%, and it's actually not of internet traffic, it's of malicious internet traffic, but like if 11% of API bot attacks is what's needed to get tickets, maybe the ticketing system needs a refresh or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, let's go back to you walk up to a window now. Let's just do that for a year and see what happens to internet traffic. I found that part to be very surprising because it is a very specific, actually objectively kinetic thing where like, payment card fraud, account takeover, and data scraping, all digital, but ticket scalping is like ultimately kinetic because it's
did it specifically say tickets? Because I know there's also like merchandise models that operate on the same thing. So I think of like Supreme and these other sort of limited release things, the sneakerheads. Like there's all these niche markets that thrive on scarcity, and I bet you that's where a lot of this stuff's going. And if you think about it, writing a script that hammers one of these APIs, if that's being counted as bot traffic, then I could see a lot of people trying to get their foot in the game, trying to buy low, sell high.
You are 100% correct in reading through it. Scalping attacks, purchasing or reserving large volumes of high demand items or services. So I suppose in that case, then, yeah, you're correct. It's not just tickets. So it could be merchandise and things like that. But still, I mean, if anyone ever needed a data-based or network traffic-based measurement of how big these markets are, I mean, 11% of all malicious API traffic is geared towards,
which is 37% of all internet traffic.
Crazy.
So
it's
what are we looking at there? We're looking at about 3 or 4% of all internet traffic is
built around limited release. I mean, maybe the Pop Marts and the Ticket Masters of the world have something figured out.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's just. I like to learn about things like these because it shows you like the hidden cost behind the scenes, which is kind of weird. Like, what does it mean if you have a limited release? Looking at you, former Shmoocon. What does it mean when you have a limited window and a limited ticket release? Like, what does that do to the internet? Is it a bunch of people just hitting F5 repeatedly? No, it's 3 to 4% of global internet traffic, which is just crazy. But anyway.
Yeah, I also find it interesting too, because it's like that emergent property that comes out of these complex systems we build, stuff that people could never anticipate. Like I think about like sloshing and network load balancing and stuff like that. You get these weird ripples through the network. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's interesting the way it kind of trickles down, not to quote a political term, but still.
It's trickling, and I would like it to stop. The bots themselves are increasingly disguising as legitimate services, notably Byte Spider bot, which accounts for over half of all AI-assisted bot activity, mimics ByteDance's legitimate crawler, leading to defenders hesitating to block it for fear of impacting search engine optimization or legitimate data aggregation. Other frequently observed AI-assisted bots include Applebot, ClaudeBot, and ChatGPT UserBot, though their authenticity or alignment with their namesake is often questionable. The tactic of masquerading as known good crawlers complicates detection and mitigation, especially in environments where businesses rely on open access for marketing, analytics, or data partnership reasons. Imperva, the company behind the report, is having blocked 13 trillion bot requests in 2024 alone, with 2 million daily incidents involving AI-enabled bots. These range in sophistication, but increasingly leverage AI not only for scaling attacks, but also for real-time feedback loops, analyzing what tactics bypass defenses and iteratively improving bot behavior. This dynamic adaptation combined with AI-generated polymorphism challenges existing detection models. The implications for defenders is a narrowing window for response and a need to pivot towards more behavior-based or identity-aware approaches in bot mitigation, especially as adversaries weaponize AI to lower the barrier of entry for more complex operations. So not directly the same, but one of the trends I think we talked about last week on the show that I saw at RSA was the plethora of companies that were dealing with non-human identities. And so historically, this would just be like API keys and stuff. But I think more and more so, we are going to be managing this like human, non-human presence on the internet and networks, and like what's a good non-human presence and what's a malicious one. It's going to get complicated.
100%, man. And I we'll see. Time will tell, right? We'll see what happens as we go through and continue to, I think, explore and kind of pull on this a little bit more. And what I mean by that is we're still just seeing statistics and data of some early stuff, but this is a good start to that conversation, Chris, of like the amount of network traffic associated with bots. One, let's start to identify who it is, what it's doing. Then we can start to identify good, bad, real, fake, completely machine driven, completely, human driven. And then maybe human tasked versus human automated. And there's all sorts of ways to like slice and dice what's happening here, I think, which every little data point gives us some more unique insight into what's happening. And I find that to be just the most refreshing part about this is that we're still very young in understanding what this impact is going to be. And it's going to be an interesting time. I think you and I are going to be reading more reports like this in the future, detailing these high level statistics about what's happening.
So I want us to make a future prediction right now, and I want your like all right, the Price is Right style prediction for when human presence on the internet accounts for single digit percentages.
Say that again. Sorry.
So when will human activity on the internet account for 10% or less of traffic on the internet?
2028.
2028. Yeah.
2028.
Bold move. I'm going to go $1 on that one.
All right.
Awesome, man. Thanks for doing this again. Always a pleasure. And let's try and make it happen more in real life, because it's fun to sit in the same room and talk.
Absolutely. That was great. Thanks, Chris. Take care. I'll see you next week.
Okay, sir. Bye.
Later.